2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon.
Don't touch that dial now. We're just getting started.
Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Rutherford.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinney.
And today we're going to be talking about two games for the first time. I know, right? We're going to be talking about Resident Evil 7's teaser trailer. Not a trailer. You don't watch it. You play it. Demo.
Experience, whatever.
Resident Evil 7 teaser, or Resident Evil 7 Biohazard teaser beginning hour. And also PT. And we're going to, as long as this is cool with everybody, because we didn't discuss this beforehand, my intention is to start with Resident Evil.
Okay.
So we're not going in chronological order. We're going in how interesting the games are. So,
thank you, by the way, for establishing that the chronology of Resident Evil 7 is, like, distinctively after PT.
Oh,
They take place in the same universe.
In the same universe. In the Norman Reedus universe.
Yes.
Who's not in either. Well, he's technically not in PT, actually.
Nothing's in PT anymore.
Yeah.
But do we have confirmed Reedus for RE7?
No, not even a little bit. There's no Reedus. But
as far as you know.
He doesn't exist.
The game, this demo was released in June of this year, 2016, in case you're listening to this in the future. And it's fucking pretty cool, I guess.
Which I feel like, for relevance, because of what they're doing, we need to also set up what build of this that we played.
True. This is the first update that they've put through. So I don't know the version number.
Neither do I.
But when this initially released, which was, I believe, during E3.
Yes.
Yeah. It was just, I mean, it's not much more now. But the initial build involved, like, there's a lot of things, a lot of objects in the game, and a lot of people on the internet were trying to figure out what to do with all of them. And this update kind of confirms that what the objects do is still not actually in the game. It's just sort of like they're slowly rolling out additional things to do.
Right. In this most recent update, they added a new ending where you can answer a phone call and the voice says something about, like, all doors lead somewhere.
Right. If they didn't, they wouldn't be doors. Which is kind of a cheeky...
Right. Which would seem to imply that, like, all the unopenable doors in the demo will eventually be made openable and have more content.
Not to mention you have, like, an axe, which can't be used to break anything other than boxes, and a key that doesn't go anywhere. But we will probably get into that. The thing that I actually wanted to start with is, I guess, on a slightly more personal level here, because both of these games, obviously, are horror demos. Welcome to October. That's what we're going to be doing. And notably, I'm a huge fan of horror, and horror games and movies, etc. And Andy shares this to a certain extent.
Yes, not quite on the same level as Chad, but I do enjoy
I can
horror.
forgive a lot of really terrible things for just trying to be scary. I like it to a fault. Where JJ, you don't like it at all.
Yeah, I feel like, because there's so many things that I don't like, especially in so many of those things that have been recorded at the podcast, I feel the need to sort of draw a line here. I don't enjoy them. I super respect horror in general, and as we will soon see, super respect sort of both of these games in different ways, but it's just not something I'd ever do with my time. It's just not... I'm too much of a scaredy pants.
Well, that's like... Because I was at your hesitation, I guess, when playing these games, sort of like it made me really curious. So, like, I actually just last night did, like, some actual, like, psychology research.
Oh, Jesus.
As to, like, why people like horror. And really, like, the thing that that kept coming up was that people view horror as, like, a challenge. It makes them feel stronger when they, like, are scared by something and, like, make it through to the other side, even though, like, logically they know there's no actual danger to them.
Right.
And so I guess what I just don't understand is that, like, I don't know why I like horror that much, but I really appreciate that these kind of things can exist. And I don't know. Like, I think I understand why you are not a fan of it. You don't prefer to you don't prefer to make yourself
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Extremely vulnerable. And not in a way that can be overcome or interacted with. Just the experience of vulnerability for the sake of feeling that.
And
My relationship with horror is that when I was a kid, horror was like super effective on me, and
Right.
like I did not want anything to do with any scary movies. And like now as an adult, they aren't very effective on me at all. So there's this kind of like feeling like I missed out on something. Like now I find that like the idea of like being like truly scared by a piece of media to be like really interesting.
Mhm.
And like now I feel like I missed out on the opportunity to really experience it fully. So like I'm always kind of chasing like the scariest movie or game.
So it sounds like you're sort of the addict in this scenario.
I mean, not quite. I mean, I probably made it sound a little more glamorous than it really is. But like, I just want like, I don't know. There's only like a very few scary movies that have really affected me,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I just on the other when I come out the other side, I always look back on those experiences like fondly, I guess.
right.
Like I don't know. They make you feel like alive, I guess. You know
It's
what I mean?
true. It's true. Technically speaking, and this comes from my research, the like experience of being scared or like witnessing something that is macabre
Yeah.
releases dopamine in your brain, which chemically speaking is like part of the brain's reward structure. So you are like your brain actually rewards you for watching gross, disgusting things and also being scared, which is fucking cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have sort of a similar experience where when I was in, oh god, like the 6th grade, I was like maybe 12 years old, and you're trying to do the math to figure out how old you are in 6th grade.
That sounds right.
I remember I saw The Ring, and it like severely fucked my day. Like I just had no idea. Like I was just terrified.
Wait, so then you saw The Ring at like the beginning of the day, and the rest of the day
Actually,
was fucked?
yeah, like I saw it in a car. Wow, like on like one of those pull down DVD players.
Wow.
That's-
That really speaks to the quality of the movie.
It's a good movie. But yeah, like all of this to say though that I believe that games, in as much as we all believe that games are a medium that can like convey a story in the same way, if not better, than movies can in some situations. I feel like horror games are really like the next echelon of horror. Like putting yourself, because horror movies force you to put yourself into that position where you have to be empathetic toward the characters, but you don't have to make that leap with a game because you just are that person.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, because like I didn't watch horror films till college, really,
Right.
or late high school or whatever, and I never played horror games either. So I remember playing Outlast for the first time, which is like the first like
Right.
big horror game I ever played. And, like, just being really, like, taken aback of, like, how effective it was on me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you really, I don't know, something about the setup of that game, it just makes you feel really helpless.
Yeah.
And those first couple of scares are, like, really, really great.
Yeah, without like turning this into a podcast on horror games generally, Outlast is great because it does take it takes basically everything that works really well in the cinema and puts it into a game. And so while I don't think that Outlast is like an evolution on the genre, it is like the best of horror applied to games.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that.
Like wherever they can. So that's, I don't know. Without anything else, we can get into the game proper.
Yeah, yeah.
And
All right.
so, Resident Evil 7 Beginning Hour opens with a scene that's just titled Kitchen.
It's titled?
It's like it comes up and says
Like the videotape,
Mhm.
like
Oh,
the description of it, it just says kitchen,
right.
parentheses.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this this clip like just the opening clip before you're given control of your character was released earlier with no indication as to what it applied to, like what it was actually an advertisement for, which is hilarious. Because basically Capcom just like released a weird CG video of somebody being tied up in a kitchen. It was like, you guys make of that what you will. But yeah, so this was originally shown at E3, and pretty much immediately the alarm bells went off and everyone was like, oh, Capcom is making Silent Hills. Like, they're taking what PT was and making it a game. But because Beginning Hour was available, like, immediately, everyone was able to play it and see what the actual differences were. Mm-hmm. And it does play differently, but most notably, it plays really differently than a Resident Evil game.
Yeah. Not completely differently than a Resident Evil game, and also not completely similar to PT. It's sort of a strange middle ground between the two.
Yeah, I think it has more in common with Outlast, as I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like a kind of a combination between the two ideas.
And not just because you, like, actually have a camera on you at one point.
I feel like it's also important to establish that even though the way this game has been received already and is going to be received in the future is sort of inevitably going to be tied to the legacy of PT.
Yep.
The game, in its inception, was not that. The game is not entirely a response to PT. The development of the game predates PT's like public existence as a thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Capcom in general, based on a couple of quotes that I found from different sources, are extremely happy that Silent Hills is not going to exist.
Oh yeah, there's no way that they're like
As just
bemoaning that.
Right, yeah, it's just like a general like consumer though. It really seems like this game exists because of PT.
The timing is just horrible, even still with it not existing.
Do you think it influenced the development of the game? Because like seems like, because I said it seems so derivative.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're speaking now having an actual gameplay trailer.
Yeah, because like how long in between like PT and this demo was there?
See, you count me for not looking up the information on both games.
It feels like it was like a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, it was. I believe PT came out in 2014.
Like, in terms of specific feature sets, the only like specific confirmation that I can remember after the things that I looked up is that this game was a first-person game before Capcom knew about Silent Hills.
I'll believe that.
Yeah,
but that's and it just. I think that like the coincidence of that, albeit not really massive when it comes to video games, you have two options in a 3D game. Yeah. There's no second-person game where you like watch a guy do something.
Wait! I can think of one. Wasn't there in the PlayStation 2? Wasn't there like a camera at some point, and there was a game where you played as a guy, like watching video footage of a woman, but it was entirely controlled through voice commands. So you gave her commands through the voice.
I have heard of this. I actually wrote it down because I thought Chad and I should play it at some point.
It's terrible.
Oh, is it? Maybe this is a different game with the same idea.
Maybe thinking of Hey You Pikachu.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
but actually, that's still a first-person game if you're playing as the person talking to... If you were playing as the woman, but viewing it through the eyes of the other person... Well, then it would be a second person.
Kind of, because the screen at all times is just the video footage of her that your character is looking into, and the voice commands are supposed to be, in an ideal world, like sort of one-to-one to what she does. Okay. So you'd be like, go back to the last room, and she'll go back to the last room. There's an X-Player review of this that exists.
Pull up dust off the X-Player review.
Yeah.
For confirmation.
So, barring the incredibly rare possible second-person game, you really only have two options in terms of like perspective on a game. And what's notable about this game being in first person, that's I'm just forcibly re-railing us here.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Is that no other Resident Evil game... there might have been like a weird rail shooter spin-off or something.
Yeah, mainline Resident Evil
games are always in third person.
Yeah.
And so this is unique in that. And it I guess it kind of speaks more to how, as consumers, we are more likely to make that comparison because, despite the fact that not that weird to see a first-person game.
Right.
To be like, it's just like PT.
I mean, it has kind of been a trend
Yeah.
in horror games to go first person.
Mhm.
And if
for a
anything, during development, what they were really trying to respond to was that trend and Resident Evil 6 itself.
Right.
It would be a good idea to do anything to distance themselves from Resident Evil
Didn't
6.
people hate Resident Evil 5 as well?
People did. I'm a big defender of it.
Yeah, Resident Evil 5, like, has people that believe in it. No one believes in Resident Evil 6.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
Okay.
even own a copy of Resident Evil 6 and haven't played it out of principle. It's not out of principle, it's because I don't have time, but still.
You end up loving it.
Yeah, I'll play it and be like, this is actually the best one. You had, like, lots of notes, you said.
Oh, I do. And not all of them are in relation to, like, Capcom, quote, bricking it in response to the existence of PT's trailer, to quote from their UK senior marketing director.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I was really excited to come through this. I loved the opportunity to sort of, like, compare and contrast these two games directly. We've established that this game is first person for very, like, deliberate reasons, as a way to respond to how horror games as a genre have sort of improved as, within the eyes of the public, Resident Evil as a brand has sort of, like, devolved further and further into its action elements. I was wondering, since you seem to also think that that's really important, like, knowing that it's not just a PT ripoff, why was the switch to first person necessary?
I've got, my response to that are basically, I have two thoughts. One, I don't know if this is the case, and I don't want to, like, put this off as if to say, like, that it was shoehorned, but PlayStation VR is a thing, and the game was aware of it when it was being developed, and is going to be released on PlayStation VR. And a VR third-person game would be, like, the biggest mindfuck of all time. Because you would have no idea what the hell you were doing. And it would actually be a second-person game. But the other thing is Amnesia: The Dark Descent, right? Like, Amnesia was this game, this fucking, like, behemoth that just showed up. Nobody knew or cared, really, except for people who had played Penumbra. I think me and, like, 12 people in Britain.
Yes.
That frictional games was even a thing, and then it became this huge YouTube sensation because people like watching people get scared. And this started this whole boom in horror games, and it also popularized the genre that I made up, that I refer to as haunted house games, which is basically where you just don't have any way to interact with the environment on, like, an on-demand level. You have no weapons or things.
Yeah.
You just walk and interact in set ways. And the game just tries to build tension and release that tension in, like, its own rhythms. And that has become such a popular thing, and that is what PT is, and that is what this game is. And that's what Outlast is. That I think that it just is, it speaks to the larger trends in horror games, to the point where, like, all of these indie games that can be cranked out at a much faster rate, finally AAA games are actually starting to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I think Resident Evil 7 will be the first AAA game from a major publisher to be this kind of haunted house walk-around horror game.
And they're planting their flag in the sand, showing off all of their tech by making the setting, at least in this trailer, in the daytime, so you can see the unbelievably large number of small detailed objects and garbage strewn around your environment.
Yep, super gross. Yep.
Is that raven in that microwave?
Yep. Is it a raven?
I don't know.
It's like a crow.
It's some
or
kind of a bird
raven.
in the microwave.
Yeah, one of those two things.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really identify microwaved birds unless they were like defeathered.
Like
slaughtered
like a
birds.
rotisserie chicken.
Yeah. In fact, but I don't even bet that I could. Like, if you just gave me the flesh of two different types of birds, I bet I could not identify.
That's fair, yeah.
Other than, like, size.
I'm
Right,
pretty
you'd
sure
have to
only
eat
a
it
bird
first.
expert could do that.
That's why I wanted to, no, I wouldn't want to claim that I can be like, oh no, that's clearly a cardinal flesh, when that was some other kind of flesh.
Sure. So my take on this, and I know less about Resident Evil than Chad does, but I also have to think that the reception to 5 and 6 weren't so great. Too bad.
In that order.
And
not great.
You have to
terrible.
think that they looked at the current trends in horror games. You know, you see Amnesia and Outlast. Those kinds of games are becoming really popular.
Yep.
And they had to have looked and been like, okay, last time people were really stoked on Resident Evil was 4, and that's when we made a big change to the formula. So, like, I think that was just like right place, right time. They're like, let's change it again. Let's move to this current trend, and let's, you know, just try to make a really great game and not try to do Resident Evil 4 again.
Right.
They're still trying to do Resident Evil, though.
Yeah.
Lots of tiny ways.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is like, Capcom is not known for being a horror developer. Like, that's because they are Capcom. They have dozens and dozens of properties. Resident Evil is just their horror property. And so, what Resident Evil was, and what Resident Evil is now, and what Resident Evil is going to be, are 3 completely different things.
Yeah.
Because the original Resident Evil games, all the way up through Code Veronica, and I honestly don't remember if that came out before or after 0, but we're not going to split hairs.
Those are things that I know.
Yeah, are like, they are adventure-y, isometric, fixed camera perspective horror games,
Yeah.
and then it became an action game series, and now it's becoming this new thing.
Yeah, in this sense, we sort of like missed one generation by not sort of addressing like the post-4 era. In terms of like the chronology of the evolution of the series, we've talked about the first Resident Evil game,
Right.
and then the like entered survival horror, which you could go back on our last customer reference, morphed into a thing that gave you enough control over your environment that you could sort of grapple with it, and then that became action out of control, and now they're trying to tie it down, but in like a completely different mechanics set that still has the same goal of making you scared.
It's interesting that in that the second era of Resident Evil games, that like the one that is most frequently said to actually be scary is what is that called? The one with the eyeball on the cover.
Is it the DS game?
The DS game. And the
Really?
reason is because you don't have very good control because you're using a handheld.
Oh.
And so it kind of harks back to the old days of like not being able to just like gun a guy down with no issue.
Yeah, no gunning being done in Resident Evil 7.
Not true. The gameplay trailer does include
The ammo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the teaser now has ammo in it. And the gameplay trailer shows you using a gun.
Oh, I did not see the trailer with guns.
I'm a little
yeah.
nervous
the
about
arrow.
this. Maybe more nervous than I should be.
See,
Yeah.
I feel like, well, yeah, exactly what you just said there. I don't think it's cause for alarm. I feel like if they're smart, which who knows,
Yeah.
who's pulling the strings and telling them they have to do this and that, but
It'll be a surprise reveal that
yeah.
Hideo Kojima is the one that's doing the whole thing.
but I really don't think they would release this playable trailer and be like, oh, the actual game's going to be totally different than
Right.
this, where you're mowing down zombies in a wide open street.
Like,
Yeah.
you spawn outside the house, then the camera pulls out, and you're in third person, and you're Chris Redfield with a machine gun.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that it would be more similar to the originals, where, like, you have a limited amount of ammo, or, like, a hand axe that's really shitty to use against the zombies, and it's, like, about, like, resource management and only, like, attacking zombies, like, sparingly.
Right.
But if they, like you said, really attempt to keep themselves faithful to this initial sort of like playable trailer, I think even that old style of like scary limited ammo conservation isn't going to be maintainable, just because the number of enemies that you're going to be able to encounter has to be really, really small. Like, when I went through that game, that demo, the thing that struck me was that I was essentially playing through a slasher movie. There was like there's one guy in the actual demo that's like your foe, and there's one other person in some of the like CGI footage that's threatening and kills someone.
Right.
So that means in the totality of this like
May
first
or may not be
hour,
the same person.
we've encountered 1 to 2 people right? This is not a game where they're going to be able to use guns like another Resident Evil game as a way to remove problems, because assuming that they stay commensurate with the trailer, there's just not going to be that many problems. The problems are just supposed to be huge, insurmountable things that you're running from, which is also why I found it odd when I learned just now that guns are a thing, because you could use an axe for tons of environmental things. There are other uses for axe than a self-defense mechanism, and assuming you gave it those other uses, it could even make the times you tried to use it for self-defense more meaningful in like the full game. Because you can imagine a circumstance where you pick up this axe and you feel safe and confident and you slam through some boxes and, you know, get into the downstairs by hacking some wood away from the doors and you feel prepared. But then you figure out that the axe is useless. Like, you can still maintain the illusion of that sort of like you're going to be killed by the slasher thing with the existence of that kind of weapons. But with a gun, it seems harder.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, but they show in the trailer, like the actual trailer, they basically play a cutscene for you, and they show that these people, the Baker family, who are the people who are like abducted you, are not like superhuman, or at least not outwardly superhuman. Because like a dude just like breaks a dude's arm, and he just is like, fuck. And it's like it's not like he was like he just like took two fingers and snapped his arm off like Superman. He's not like, they don't have powers really.
So the trailer is also playing up like the Baker family as like the antagonist force.
Yeah, it's like a total Texas Chainsaw kind of situation.
Well, but
like, who knows how that ties into the whole game, though.
Right.
Yeah, we know Umbrella's involved, which is already weird.
Yeah.
And we know that there's at least one zombie.
Right, because it's not like in the original where it's like a huge-ass mansion.
Right.
There's like one regular-sized house. So, like, this...
To be fair, that mansion had a huge facility under it. So it could be like a shitty house with a state-of-the-art
like, there has to
be
be more to it. Like, and I have to imagine that the demo is not even close to representative of like the antagonistic threat.
Right.
Like, I imagine that you won't just be up against one maybe not supernatural zombie guy the whole game.
Okay.
Like, if you introduce a whole family and they have like maybe not supernatural abilities, or like they're here, now they're there. Right. Now one's in the hall, now he's not, you know, typical horror shit.
Yeah.
You could probably do something really cool with that and fuck with the player.
Right.
And have it be like, oh, it was an illusion, you just shot at nothing.
I don't get the feeling they're going to go that direction. This whole game...
I'm just spitballing.
And this could just be me thinking it's more exaggerated in comparison to PT. It didn't feel... It was really grounded. Like, I just felt like, again, slasher movie. I was just in a shitty house, and a guy stabbed me with a sharp implement, and I died. Like, that... Was there... I heard reference, even though we didn't see it in our playthroughs, that there's like a ghost or something you can see. Does that exist?
We'll look up on the break.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
Good. As far as I know, like, I mean, unless somebody they did a quarter circle turn on the top stair and then swung the axe 3 times and liquefied a Dreamcast and poured it into the memory card slot, and then a ghost appeared. Like, as far as like anyone just playing this game would notice, the only like suspicious non-human things that happen are like the doll that falls from the ceiling, the mannequin that falls over.
Actually, I noticed when we watched Dan play that doll is hanging there.
Oh, and it
before
just like
you
snaps?
before you pick up the bolt cutters.
Okay.
Well, damn.
Yeah, in general, it felt like this game wasn't trying to be supernatural and was trying to establish itself where you have an enemy that can just wreck your shit at any time, and that's supposed to be the point of tension.
Maybe it's my preferences in horror, and I was just seeing what I wanted to see. But, like, I got, like, this very vague underlying, like, sense that, like, something supernatural might be happening here.
Resident Evil, generally speaking, is, like... likes to run the like horror line where it's, it's like a horror game where everything is supernatural, but they explain it with science.
Right.
So like they probably have just like some version of the T virus or something.
Right. Because like, what's his name? Andre, right? The guy who's
I don't know. Like
is he
a
the
producer
co-host or the
something?
producer?
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. He's there in the house, and he just like wanders off, and then he's like Blair Witchin it in the basement.
Yeah.
So like that seems like there's some kind of supernatural influence.
But he was like on a hook. wasn't
Yeah, but like he
It was like a pipe.
No.
It was
See-
like he was being like on a gerbil feeder for people.
One, I guess maybe once again it's me seeing what I want to see, but like it seems like something like one ringed him, like called him, and he just wandered off.
Right.
I don't.
You
I agree
know?
that the ambiguity is supposed to be ambiguous because you want that ambiguity to
yeah.
exist in horror settings in the first
Right.
place.
So the question is, or whether or not they're going somewhere with that,
Yeah.
or if they're just using it as a trope.
As a thing to try and scare
Yeah.
you. It's the same ambiguity.
So
So.
it's up in
Either-
the air.
I mean, either way, it like is effective in terms of like how it does startle you and like not. Yeah, it's definitely unnerving.
I'm just saying, it creates this really hard situation for them, assuming the player character eventually gets a gun in the inventory slot,
Right.
where if the gun has any purpose, it's probably not going to be like for like a puzzle piece in the same way you could use an axe or bolt cutters.
Yeah.
There's, like guns don't have like unique, like you can't shoot off a lock probably.
You can totally shoot off a light.
What?
Well, I mean,
Mythbusters-
not in real life.
Okay,
That's
yes.
what I meant. Which they're
Okay.
trying to be grounded.
Oh, yeah.
Then you can't use it as a solution to puzzles. It just has to be a killing implement.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
But
I mean, it is a video game.
I know.
They could just be like, "Fuck it, you can shoot locks."
All I'm saying is that if they try and treat the gun as if it's not a thing designed to, solve puzzles like the bolt cutters or the axe couldn't solve.
Right.
And it's just a killing implement. But you also are attempting to have like human-like enemies, that part of one family, and there are like maybe around 30 of them.
Right.
If it's like a full family, then you can't allow the player to have the freedom to just like gun down Hillbilly McKill's dude. That would. Like that, you can't have the correct pacing and you can't build up anything appropriately. How many bullets, for example, in the current build of the game can you get? Like 4?
I think it's like 2. I think you pick up 2 boxes that have 1 bullet each.
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking. Like this is getting into like the nitty gritty of the game design.
Yeah.
But like if they really limited the amount of ammo you had, or like made it so your gun can just break like it's an old rusty ass gun.
Sure.
Like I think they could control it enough to keep what they're like the intent of the demo intact.
So,
Yeah.
like, imagine the circumstance, I have a gun, and there are actual, unlike
you
what
have
exists...
2 bullets.
Yeah, and unlike what exists
And
currently in
there's
the game...
30 people.
But the 30 aren't rushing you, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time?
You
what
can
you're scared
pull,
of is
like,
the
a-
one dude.
You don't know. That's the thing.
I don't know, I know. I'm just saying,
Yeah, okay.
if this is representative, there's lots of weird problems by
Yes.
putting guns in. If you played through
Oh, no,
this
I
trailer
agree.
with a gun, it would cause lots of problems.
It would, yes, it would relieve almost all of the tension.
Yeah. Assuming your gun did anything. And it should do something if the game's trying to be grounded.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, if you had an empty gun, that almost would add to the tension.
Yeah.
Of you trying to find ammo and not being able to.
That's actually a good use. You could get a cool circumstance in which you're scrabbling around for a bullet for your gun. That would be cool, and use it less like a thing that you actually have to shoot, and more like part of a scripted sequence.
It's like the way that the rocket launcher is in Resident Evil 4. You had something you have in your back pocket if shit goes down.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, that's so. That whole long
The
discussion
back
about the
pocket
use of
rocket launcher.
guns is one of the things that makes me uncomfortable about the influence of the past games and the present
No,
design.
I can totally see that.
Well, and that's just AAA game design. We know that if Silent Hills came out,
and it had a gun.
it would likely be third person, and you would likely have a gun, and you would likely be shooting things because that's what Silent Hill has traditionally been, and they have Norman Reedus' fucking mocap model, so obviously they're going to put it in third person
Of
because
course.
they didn't spend that money for nothing.
Right.
Uh,
That raises... We'll talk about that when we
in the
talk about
second half,
PT.
yeah.
Talking more about 7, though,
Mhm.
the other thing that made me sort of about the directions after the update is the existence of the photograph of the umbrella.
Oh, that's actually been in there since.
Yeah,
the
that was
first,
in
yeah.
there originally.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, but like I don't see what that helps.
Well, the I think if you flip,
It's an Easter egg.
yeah, well, it's not really.
No.
I think it's supposed to
The picture itself.
inform you on the plot in some way.
Yeah.
Because what like the thing that it is though is it's a picture of a helicopter with Umbrella's logo on it. But then I forget if it's like written on the back or if it's what they say when you pick up the phone in the original build is that like they're watching us, and it's the Bakers, the family of cannibals, are not aware. Like they're not like in cahoots with Wesker.
Yeah.
Like one of them is not just gonna like put on a pair of sunglasses and do 3 backflips and be like, I've been here the whole time. It's going to be like a situation where like Umbrella has in some way like poisoned them or like done
Some kind of
something genetically
experiment
to them.
gone wrong.
And
I don't see how that helps.
I think it's supposed to.
it's a Resident Evil game. They have to make it Resident Evil-y.
Do they?
No, but they will.
But
we
like
had a video game where they took the name of Prey and they just made a game not in any way related to Prey because I thought the word Prey it sounded cool as a title for their video game.
See, I think it's more justifiable than that, because I mean it is a main series Resident Evil game, and I don't think it feels like even as bad like what you're describing, like the new God of War game, which is like completely different than God of War, but it's called God of War, and Kratos is in it to sell the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this game feels like the Resident Evil team was like, let's change the style, but still make like a Resident Evil game.
I think the thing that you're hung up on, and I don't want to like make it sound as though I'm like berating you for this, because it is not in any way your fault. It's like as somebody who's played just a shit ton of horror games, the plot of a horror game, while not important, is less important than the moment to moment stories that happen. So, if you look at like Amnesia, the the plot of that game is you don't know who you are, you find out who you are, and you stop a guy from destroying the world. There are nuances, and there's environmental storytelling, but that stuff just aids in like your immersion from room to room.
Right.
And so if the game follows in those footsteps and the footsteps that were put down by this trailer, this teaser, then honestly, them just having like a Deus Ex Umbrella show up and be like, this is why there were zombies, I'd pretty much be satisfied with that. Like, if it was just scary, and you are at any moment afraid of a zombie, or afraid of a cannibal, or afraid of a refrigerator full of disgusting man meat, then whatever their overarching plot to somehow tie it into Raccoon City is whatever. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Also, it's just a trailer. Like, it's totally possible they put that in there with no kinds of clues or context for you to understand it. It'd just be like, here's whetting your appetite for the game.
Like misdirection or something.
Yeah, like, you know, just like tying it in. It's like, I said it was an Easter egg and you disagreed with me, but like, I think for the purposes of the trailer, it's an Easter egg to tie it into Resident Evil.
I think I completely agree with everything both of you have said. In fact, what you said specifically, Chad, is part of my argument for why I don't think the tie-in is necessary.
I'll agree that
there's nothing,
technically it's not necessary.
There's nothing that we've seen so far, at least as far as I'm aware, that needs to be explained by the virus of a pharmaceutical company. Like, the overarching narrative of the trailer that we played is 3 guys walk into a house and get murdered by a crazy guy who lives in the house.
Right.
Like, you don't need to appeal to things. You don't even need to tie this into Raccoon City for it to be, you know, a good reason for it to be a horror game. It's only here because they feel obligated, like they need some way to say that it's a Resident Evil game, despite it being a AAA horror game.
Right.
I think that's okay.
You're right. You're totally right. But this is a AAA franchise, so the people at the studio are going to be like, it's a Resident Evil game, so it has to have Umbrella in it. Like, that's the way it is. It's like, they wouldn't... Well, okay, this isn't true anymore.
Yeah.
But this is, like, the go-to example. Like, they wouldn't make a Zelda game where Link didn't have the tunic and hat.
Yeah.
But they just did make that. So, I can't use that anymore.
And I already brought up Prey.
True. But like,
But I mean, but Prey doesn't have like
Sure,
the sway.
sure.
of
they were like, we're making a Resident Evil game. It has to have XYZ, and that's just the way it is.
I don't like.
Even though you're totally right, they don't need those things, but they're gonna have those.
The
things.
unfortunate thing is that like the words Resident Evil are what are going to sell this game to people, and so that like for the most part, I mean, there are obviously people who are going to be excited about it for other reasons, but that's
like me.
I
I was not a Resident Evil fan,
Yeah.
and am basically just like a newly converted one. And I played that teaser and was excited about it.
Yeah. And not to beat the horse too far, but since you, Chad, are already invested in most things Resident Evil, like, would you have been sad if there was just no Wesker or even no zombies?
I mean, okay. One, no. And two, I feel like the majority of people also would agree on that point. That, like, a series doesn't necessarily have to keep all the same trappings. The
I
problem
feel
is
like
that
if you got rid of the zombies, though.
I feel like the series. What's
Well, they
important is
kind
that
of did in 4, but
the series need to
they're
keep
still there,
like
really.
roughly the same goal.
There's zombies.
That's what you need. You need, in order for things to keep a name. I don't think it's like lore connections that are the things that are going to be. We certainly agree that's not the most important, but even remotely important. I think what's important is that, like, if you call, like if you made a new Call of Duty that not just only
is in space.
is in space, not only just like wasn't a shooter. God, you find Call of Duty in space so intrinsically funny.
it really
It's
is
unbelievable.
fun.
Because it's like 80s movies
I
where they
know.
were like, the fourth one is in space.
But the goal's the same, right?
Yes.
You're still a crazy, empowered shooting guy, killing all your foes.
It's like if you would have called Bloodborne Dark Souls 2. And it was exactly the same.
Okay.
kind of. This is weird.
I think the whole thing, honestly, is solid, because you're right. Like, a series does not need that in order to maintain its, like, integrity, and beyond that, it's more important to put out a good product than it is to put out something that conforms to the ideas of what your series put forth. Sure. However, when you have a series that large, when you have a company as big as Capcom, what happens is that these things get focus grouped, they get overproduced, they get put into a boardroom, and people talk about it. And they say, I don't know, I don't like that you didn't include Umbrella. So they put an Umbrella logo on a helicopter. I don't think it's going to overall, like, completely destroy the quality of the game. I just think it's going to be, like, a weird vestigial, like, biohazard thing that gets put into the game just because.
I think that's the bottom line. Like, as much as we don't like it, like, this franchise is big enough and they care enough about how it affects their company that they're going to be like, connect the dots.
Yeah, like they have a
paint by the
checklist of
numbers.
things that are going to need to.
They have to go in. Like, it can't. If it doesn't have Umbrella, it's not Resident Evil.
and if they're good about it, which like is impossible to tell because it's Capcom and they're like one of the largest developer, like both develop and publishing houses in the whole business. It's like Resident Evil 4 was really good. I trust those people. Resident Evil 6 was really bad. I don't trust those people.
They're fired.
It's like, I don't know. Like, you can't just say, like, it'll be good because Capcom's behind it.
Yeah.
It's like, that'll be good because Japan is being made in Japan. Like, it's not, it doesn't make sense to generalize.
Yeah.
It's too many people.
It's like they try to, like, formalize it. Like, they try to be like, we'll get the people who made the good thing before, and then we'll try to replicate some of those good things, and hopefully the game will be good.
All right, I'll stop flicking the vestigial tails.
Because like I do agree with you. It would be great to see more big franchises do different things, but like these things happen.
Yeah,
like it's just the nature of corporate life. Yes, life.
Corporate life.
To I don't talk about like the actual teaser that we sat down to talk about.
Yeah.
Instead of Resident Evil 7 the game. Like, I mean, I don't know. We did touch on a lot of things. Like, the game is, it's slow paced, you walk around. One thing that I did want to bring up is because we shit on the axe a lot and how it is useless.
Oh no,
I didn't shit on it.
You didn't there's a complete misrepresentation. The axe was, in fact, my example of the good alternative to the gun.
That's true.
I feel like the axe is a big red herring right now, or like maybe not a red herring, but like a big question mark.
Right.
Because like, do they intend us to use that for combat?
Or anything.
Is that like yeah, or anything?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like you don't like. It's hard to see how that's representative of the final product.
Mm.
Like it just kind of raises more questions because you can't use it on anything, so you don't know how it'll work in the actual game.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I hope that it works similarly to how it does because my whole point was that the axe is probably the most like satisfying thing in the world to use.
Probably.
You swing it and you like really feel that like power behind it, and it like impacts a wall and you have to like kind of twist and pull it out. Oh my god! If that kind of thing was in every game, I would be fine with it.
I know.
It is a great attention to detail. Like I don't know how. You could probably break down the science of how they got it to feel that way. But like, it really feels like your character just swung an axe as hard as they could.
Yeah, it's so
and it
good.
just buried like 3 inches into a piece of wood, and then they ripped it out.
I know. Why it feels good in this case probably has a lot to do with like the
Because like
intricacies of sound to get.
It doesn't like rumble or anything, but it like you really feel when the axe hits the wood.
Mm-hmm. I can at least point out what ways that I think.
It is
why
the
it feels
sound design.
better.
It's
and the
really good
animation.
sound. It's really good collision.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, the collision was what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Is that we're very used to as people who play video games.
Does the camera move?
A little bit.
Like when you hit it, like
Just
you
the
know,
stopping.
It ducks a
Yeah,
little,
it ducks a little.
It's a great simulation of what you as your head does when you hit an axe. into a piece of
Capcom
wood.
just needs to release
like lumberjack.
like wood-cutting simulator 2017, where you just chop wood with the axe for Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Like now that things can actually hit other things like constantly, and you don't have to. I don't know a good way to describe this feeling, but like in like the PS2 and even into like the PS3 era of video games, because we weren't quite there at collision detection yet, you would always have, pieces of your geometry necessarily having to sort of go through other pieces of geometry in order for it to feel smooth. But your character still moved independently. So it's sort of like playing Reinhardt in Overwatch, where like you as a being are just like a turret that's moving around and you're swinging like a death zone in front of you while an animation sort of fluidly plays and is affected by nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if Reinhardt in Overwatch played like the axe in Resident Evil 7, like it would be terrible. It would be the worst thing to do because what feels good in that game is like smashing a dude to death with a big hammer with a rocket on it.
Yeah.
And in Resident Evil, what feels good is hitting an axe into a piece of wood.
Yeah.
So like, you don't want your giant rocket hammer to get stuck on walls.
Yeah, that should feel unstoppable.
Yeah, but you totally want your hand axe to stick into a wall and have to pull it out.
Yeah.
They have that commitment to the realism,
Right.
which really impacted the.
Which, I mean, this game looks hella good. Too.
It does look great.
It does. Yeah.
But yeah, it impacted the design of everything, including how you swing your axe and how it hits things.
How it's animated.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great. We've mentioned the realism a couple of times. And sort of how at different points it gets ambiguous in comparison to whether this is like vaguely spiritual or whether this is just something that's supposed to be kind of scary. Like, there were two things. I feel like the game being this grounded often sort of invites
Criticism?
not really. That was the wrong word. Like
Nitpicking?
yeah, it like invites nitpicking
That's
in
fine.
ways where being ambiguous and strange would
But-
leave you open to not being
See,
it.
I agree, but like, once again, this is like an hour-long teaser.
Sure,
Like, I feel like you purposefully don't get the whole picture here.
I know.
So like, I agree that like people are gonna nitpick it, and it's totally justifiable. But like, I think you have to keep that in mind.
What I was referencing in this specifically are things like, and you know the answer to this. The guy that you're playing in the RE7 teaser,
Clancy?
is
Clancy.
it implied
Clancy.
that Clancy has like a head-mounted flashlight and video camera?
It's not.
But the only like.
I think what you're supposed to think is that he's got like a shoulder-mounted like TV camera.
Except both of his hands are in frame all the time.
Okay,
Are they?
when you're
Not
when,
literally all
hold
the
on.
time, but often enough.
Real quick though, there's one point of disconnect here, and I
Yeah.
think only one, because when you're playing the game regularly, you don't have a camera. You're just a guy walking around. But when you put the videotape in, you're seeing something that you filmed, and the issue comes when you go down that ladder, because you couldn't have been carrying a camera at head level and use both hands to climb down a ladder.
I know, but the problem's consistent. There are more times than just the ladder. Like when the first video that plays when you start the game, where you're tied to the chair and the guy gets up and starts
Oh,
sawing
you actually like pull both
Yeah.
of your hands up.
And in
look
fact,
at
Yeah.
even though the scene opens with like as if this is a video being played back to you,
Uh-huh.
you are staring at a camera when you start, and your hands are tied together in front of you.
maybe twist. Clancy is a camera, and you're looking at a mirror.
Well, lol. You cracked the code.
Yeah, I figured it out.
He could also have like a GoPro.
That's what I'm talking about.
There could be multiple
Yeah.
cameras.
And the GoPro has a light, because also when you first get player
And that-
control,
that
you
even-
stand up with both your hands on the ground, you push up, you have like a flashlight effect in the
Yeah.
darkness.
That even would kind of seem to make some kind of sense, because if you told me that when they film Ghost Adventures, the cameramen also wear GoPros in case X happens.
Yeah.
Like, and they need both their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just that makes sense, but like it almost seems like why even have a cameraman if they're just gonna walk around? Like, is a cameraman in a world where GoPros are used to film a TV show just like
Well, no,
a guy
no.
who can keep his head steady?
I'm not saying they use the GoPros to film the show.
It's like he
It's
just
for
has
like
a GoPro
it's for
on.
like supplemental
Yeah.
footage. It's for extra footage.
Terrestrials. In
Yeah,
case
it's
they
for
see
extraterrestrial
aliens.
footage. Only GoPros can capture aliens on film. But no, like it's to fill in blanks. It's like for if something happens, but the cameraman was looking at it, they still have it captured.
Gotcha.
Like that kind of thing.
This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where being realistic invites
It
criticism
invites
like
nitpicking.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
because if we were talking about PT, none of this would come up. But we had to go through like an 8-minute conversation
See,
to
well,
determine how
this-
the thing we're seeing is being seen.
This is a problem of found footage in general.
Yeah, because you always have to like the cameraman has to be explained, and it's like there has to be some kind of contrivance as to why the person has a camera. In this case, they're on a TV show,
Which
Yeah.
makes sense.
right? And then you have to explain like physically how does it work and make it seem like to the audience at least believable enough that they're
Right.
not going to ask
And-
about it.
Personally, I really like found footage.
Mhm.
And I can't believe no other game... Well, I guess Outlast did it.
Yeah.
But, like, it just seems really genius in this game, the
Yeah.
way that it's, like, set up and then revealed.
Right, and Outlast actually does it as a handy cam, and you only have use of your left hand.
And it makes it
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
a mechanic.
Yeah, if you have to like climb a ladder, you put the camera away and
Yep.
climb the ladder. So,
And,
that's-
like, you have to find batteries
Mhm.
to recharge it and shit.
Very good. Is there anything else about Resident Evil 7 that won't come up as part of a discussion on PT?
Nope. The rest of my RE7 talks are all PT commentary.
Cool.
Like
I
comparisons.
was going to say, yeah, pretty much anything else I have to say is comparisons.
To the next game!
Well, yeah, I guess.
Hold your horses.
You just get right into it. That's cool. I was just gonna say the cool thing about Resident Evil 7 is that like unlike PT, you can go fucking download and play it right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'll take like an hour of your time.
It's also got multiple endings.
Yeah, so you can play through it multiple times, which is
I would recommend playing through it multiple
it's something we didn't even talk
It's
about at all.
specifically designed for you to play it at least twice.
Yeah, but like in addition to that, like the game has like weird divergent things where it's like if you do a thing while in the flashback, it affects like the present, but you can't take things back
Right.
from one
So,
to the other.
for
So-
example, there's a drawer in the kitchen that is locked. But after you find the videotape and you put it in and you watch it, and when you're watching the tape, it's earlier where you're filming this TV show. And when you go through the kitchen, then you can find a lockpick and unlock the drawer. So then when you're back in the present, you can open the drawer and get what's inside.
yeah, you enter into an alternate universe where the drawer is unlocked and Berenstein is spelled Berenstain.
Right.
God damn it.
I sort of just included that under more original Resident Evil Legacy stuff, because that, along with the, like, contextual prompts appearing on screen in general,
Right.
just seem to be part of the, like, you are interacting with the environment and the environment is a puzzle.
Right.
Like, it's another way that you're having agency over the world around you, which is presumably going to be most of the mechanic set.
It's been traditionally most of the mechanics set in a Resident Evil game.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's a safe bet.
Next game.
Butler!
Bring me a PT. Bring me a DualShock 4 and a bottle of champagne.
Welcome to the family, son.
Welcome back from the break.
It's a circus cast.
This is, yeah. Where we talk about Andy Serkis.
Who's that?
Gollum.
Yeah.
Oh, he's good.
And by that, I mean we talk about PT.
Oh.
Alright, so...
Alright.
Oh, God, you know what I didn't do?
Look at the information on it.
We get to have
Classic.
we forget to do this twice.
Classic chat.
In one episode. So, welcome back to NOCLIP. I'm still Chad Rutherman. And for our second half, we're going to be talking about PT. And the reason that I had to look up the information for this, other than knowing that it was released in 2014, is that technically speaking, this game was developed by Konami. However, like, the game puts itself out there as if it has been developed by 7780 Studios. Or 7780s, actually. There's an S at the end.
Ooh.
Which is, I mean, I don't want to say it's like a fake development company, but it's like a made-up name that they did to add contrivance to this game. It was directed by Hideo Kojima, famously, of the Metal Gear Solid franchise. So, this game is, for all intents and purposes, a teaser for what was going to be an upcoming Silent Hill sequel, entitled Silent Hills. And now we all know that that game has been thrown in the trash can. But it was arguably the game that I have been the most excited for literally ever. Like, it's Hideo Kojima and
Guillermo del Toro.
And Guillermo del Toro. And it's a horror game in the Silent Hill franchise, and this teaser is like the most mind-blowing thing I've ever experienced.
It's the reason you bought a PS4.
It is literally that.
For a demo.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to anyone who doesn't know, it was released as PT because they wanted the fact that it was a teaser for Silent Hills to be a secret, and that they wanted people to find out by playing the teaser.
Right.
Which is why they had the fake name, etc.
Yeah. So if you didn't know offhand that Konami had anything to do with it. And the way this game opens, and you know, like, this is where I like lack the experience.
Yeah.
Because I really wish that I had been able to be part of that like first adopters group.
Yeah.
Because playing this, I knew what it was. But had I not known, I can only imagine what my like thought process on this would be. Because it opens up and it should like the 70-30 77 80s
30 70 30.
1 2 3 0 8 6 4 5. I forget the numbers that they say. Either way, the guy on the radio.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It opens up with that like logo, and it's like on a background of some trees, and there's like a gravestone that says PT.
Yeah, like really like generic. Like somebody went outside and took a picture and they used that.
Yeah, as their logo.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you're like almost trained to just like ignore.
Yeah.
And then the game goes to black and some text pops up on the screen. And then you wake up in a room and there's a Siamese cockroach in front of you. And you like stand up and walk through a door into like literally the most well realized actual hallway
Yes, it is one of the best renderings of a hallway that's ever been produced.
I've seen photographs of hallways that I found less believable than the hallway in this game. It is outstanding how well this game is textured. Like, it just looks so crisp. And not knowing what the game was, I would be, like, it would just be so completely confounding at that point.
Yeah.
Because you have this, like, cryptic speech about the gap in the gap in the doorway is something.
No dimension.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. And you're like, I'm pretty sure the only me is me, I guess. Game. And so you proceed to the end of the hallway, you go through the door, and you find yourself at the beginning of the hallway. So that is the core literal and physical gameplay loop of this game.
Yeah, you just go through that same hallway many a time.
And just slow this down, I want to really point out how incredibly important both of those hallway entry moments are, the first two.
Mm-hmm.
The first being finally you're in like a well-lit room, it isn't just like sort of the blackness, that shows you how gorgeous everything is, which makes you immediately respect the game and take everything that it's doing so much more seriously than any other game with any other comparable art style or sense of accomplishment. So it puts you in a mindset like that's very impressed and very serious. And then after that, after you've gone through the hallway and looked through all these normal things, and you're expecting this to continue, the loop begins.
Right. And you have this expectation when you walk into something that is rendered like this. Like, I don't think that you have to be somebody who understands the way that video games are made in order to take something that is this meticulously done seriously.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that calls to you to, like, examine it and, like, really understand why this happened. You go around, you look at the pictures on the wall, you look at the clock, it telegraphs that it's intentionally 23:59, it's 1 minute before midnight. You see there's a plant and, like, a thing, there's shit all over the floors, there's, like, pictures of people, and it's, like, the same people repeated, you can tell that it's, like, a family house. And then you go through the door expecting a new area, only to be put back at the beginning of it. And that's, like, the first extremely jarring moment.
Yep. Because it looks like it's a AAA game.
Mm-hmm.
And what you would expect from a AAA game is, like, a big, impressive, in scope environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it subverts your expectations.
Yeah. It's impressive just in its, like, in its concept.
Yes.
And in my case, like, the fact that the first, that they give you the time to have the first repeat, and as far as I'm aware, there aren't any significant changes after in repeat one, that is the moment where I think they're expecting the players to be able to actually start looking at all the tiny details of the hallway. Because at this point, you don't literally know it, but you're under the expectation now, like, okay, this is what I get.
Yeah, there has to be something here.
Yeah.
Like, to do.
And that forces you to learn as tons and tons of different unique features of the hallway, which is also really important to the gameplay loop, because you need to know everything about what's going on around you in order for both the horror and the gameplay of PT to be effective.
Right. This is why it's such a goddamn tragedy that this game isn't on the store anymore. Because it's like, this is something that I think just like, this classes should be taught with this game as a centerpiece. Like,
unquestionably.
It is like, this game is a dissertation on how to, like, mess with the player's expectations and just, like, understanding how to make somebody uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's just like a horror design course could be taught like from this, because like the pacing, the sound design, all these little moving parts, all these little details I was noticing when we were watching JJ play that go towards building the tension, and it's so like masterfully done.
Yeah. And that's okay. Resident Evil 7's trailer teaser was dark in that you get up into a room with no windows and it is physically hard to see.
Yeah.
PT is dark. Like, you start the game, you walk to the end of the hallway, and the first thing that you are subjected to is a radio report about a father killing his family. And that this was not the first time that it happened in the state. Which presumably is some kind of setup for like what the plot of the Silent Hill game was going to be. But now that doesn't exist, and that it's being taken by itself as like basically the background of this trailer, is so much worse. Like, it feels so gross. Like, worse, like, morally. Like, because there just isn't any longer a larger, you have no hope for an explanation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, at no point is it going to be like, it was a Silent Hill game, therefore it was a dream, or like, this was like a purgatory thing. As far as you know in this game, this is a thing that happened, and you're basically reliving it over and over and over again. And it's so good in terms of game design, but it makes you feel just like disgusting from the moment you start the game.
Because it's being reported to you by a reporter. It's a news report that's being given over the radio. So it's always described to you by the reporter, who will later become, I guess, technically a character.
I don't think it's the same guy. I think that the radio is being like cut into by like some other. But
regardless, there was a cold, indifferent person who was describing a murder, and the fact that the murder isn't abnormal in this setting. Right.
Yeah. And not only that, but as you proceed through the game, you start to kind of realize that you did it. Yeah. Like, it was your character that was.
But can you be sure it was?
It was actually you. Yeah. Or, I mean, at the very least, you were in the house that it happened.
Yeah.
Because, of lots of reasons.
Yeah, it's debatable, for sure.
Everything is debatable. Yes. And that's going to be something that I think we're going to have to maybe mention a couple of times, but keep having to stop ourselves. Because so much of the horror of this game relies on no explanations possibly existing, especially now that we're in the post-PT world where we're not going to have Silent Hills and this is all that exists, and all that we have is the way that the game makes us feel. It's constantly going to be assaulting us with things that don't have explanation, and that we shouldn't look for explanations, because if we found them, the game would be less scary.
Yeah.
There's no T-virus anywhere in PT.
Yeah, you will not find the photograph where you turn it over and it's like a picture of Pyramid Head, and you're like, oh, because it's a Silent Hill game, they gotta get him in there. It is just PT. Yeah. And the fact that they wanted to hide the fact that it was a Silent Hills trailer probably plays into a lot of what gives it that sort of vibe. Yeah. And, oh man, for something that was created by Hideo Kojima, who is his biggest fan, dude loves himself. There are some Kojima elements to this, but it's like the only Kojima game that I've ever played where the Kojima-iness of it does not take center stage. The game, you can actually really feel Del Toro's influence.
Yep.
And I'm going to say that, and somebody's going to be like, Del Toro didn't actually have anything to do with the trailer, but I feel as though.
At least it's well imitated, at minimum.
Yeah.
He had to have had some kind of involvement with the production team.
Mm-hmm. And just the way that this whole thing is set up is just the Kojima elements are all hidden away, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel how good the team is at designing without feeling like it's overshadowed by some weird fourth wall thing until the end, the very end of the trailer. So.
Next loop.
Well, I wanted to say just while we're jerking the game off here.
Yeah.
In addition to it just being great at it understands horror and building tension and all that stuff. I think this also is just a phenomenal example of less can be more in game design, because it's the one hallway and the amount that they manage to accomplish with just that
in such a small space.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Mm. Yeah, because you can even make the argument because it's not just a hallway where you have like it's not a square area that you're exploring. It's like a path.
It's like an L.
Yeah, you have an L shape with 1.5 deviations from it, basically, and that is all you're given to work with.
And it doesn't feel that small at all.
And it's not just limited in terms of the scope of its environment. It's equally limited in its mechanic set. All you've got to do is move and zoom.
Yeah, there's not even like a crouch.
Yeah.
You literally just zoom and walk.
Like, the entirety of PT's mechanic set is just the minimum of what it needs to accomplish its goals, which is you confronting horror. And in order for you to confront horror, all you've got to do is walk and look closer. So that's all they included.
Mm-hmm. I feel like this game...
You have to press X once.
Yeah. That's a very Kojima thing.
Yeah.
I feel this game could do a lot for the future of horror and for the future of like walking simulators.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because this is basically a walking simulator, but it does not feel like a walking simulator.
Yeah, there's something that like
it feels like more.
There's so many
hard to
games
describe it.
that function like a walking simulator that feel like they need to like jam mechanics into it.
Yeah, like they feel like they're missing something.
It's like, have them interact with this. In order to solve a puzzle, they have to like pick up an object and take it somewhere and put it in a thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not really... that isn't engaging in itself. Mechanics are not a substitute for, like, environmental storytelling, which is what a walking simulator should be focusing on. Or at the very least, delivering, like, a relaxed experience.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky is basically, like, the quintessential example of this, where it was, like, a game that would have functioned perfectly well as a walking simulator, and they somehow turned it into, like... a game where you have to manage your inventory and shoot at circles. It's like, okay, I guess. Like, it's too much. And this game is just like, it has puzzles. It has, like, progression and it has a story, but it tells it in one hallway with one button. 2 buttons.
A pause screen.
Yeah, there's a pause screen as well. And yeah, it's just, and it is, as we've alluded to several times, like, actually just the scariest piece of media that I've ever taken in.
All of us,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, the first time I played this game, because I'm a genius, at 4 a.m, was just like, it was baffling. I had no idea what I was even, like, and I knew what it was, and I knew the concept of it, but I didn't know how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, every single loop, like, I'd open that door, and I would just stand there at the end of the hallway and be like, phew. Like, I need to, like, wipe the sweat off of my palms and be like, okay,
That turn.
next hallway. And, like, before I'd even open the door, because, like, I knew it was coming, or I assumed it was coming, I would be like, oh, man, I'm going to open this door. There's something's going to be there. Like, this game, like, just fucks with you on such, like, a base level that, like, every moment is tense.
And if you don't feel like it's going to be beyond the door, it's definitely going to be around the corner.
Yep.
Right? That's
in
why
the
the hallway is at
bathroom.
an L.
Right.
So you can see in front of you, you see your goal in your direction, you know there's only one fucking way you can go, but you don't know what's going to be there.
Yeah. This is, like, the fundamental... This is, like, just because of the nature of this game and, like, what they were able to do, it solves the fundamental problem of horror in, like, the simplest way. In that the scariest thing to anyone is the unknown. And that is, like, what people who tell you why horror is good will say this as, like, a mantra. And a lot of horror games, like the previously discussed Resident Evil 7, will make things dark so that you have to, like, actually inspect a thing or, like, walk up to it to know what's happening. This game has physio-spatially speaking, one door and a corner, and that just, it blocks off your view of your next 8 seconds of game, and that is enough. That's all it needs.
Yeah, like, this game, you're, like, afraid to turn around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, they've, like, maximized every possible opportunity to, like, make you afraid of what you can't see.
Mm-hmm. Look behind you. The radio guy is the best
Yeah.
thing ever.
I feel like now's the part where we need to get into discussion of how the established setting begins to warp, right? Because we have the hallway, we know we're stuck there, we know things are starting to subtly change, and we know we're afraid of what those changes could be or mean. But like the specific choices that they made and the progression of things that change is equally important.
Yeah, they kick it off in pretty much the best way they possibly could, with you just walking toward the door like you had done the past 3 times, and it just like slowly closes. And you're like, okay, now shit is getting real. Like, we're past the tutorial of walking in a circle.
Now the environment is beginning to act.
Yeah, the environment is becoming openly hostile toward you.
Very carefully, very deliberately hostile.
Yeah.
And it's like a couple of loops. It like builds up your curiosity, and it builds up tension to what's in the bathroom, or the one door.
Yeah.
You don't know it's a bathroom yet.
Yeah.
Because it's locked, but like you get like when it like shakes and there's noises coming from it.
Yeah, interestingly, the front door, I don't believe, will shake if you walk up to it.
In fact, they almost do nothing to draw attention to the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting in and of itself as a choice.
They draw attention to that location a couple of times when it's important, but like the door itself is never like brought into question.
Not like the bathroom door.
No, not like the bathroom.
Which is constantly brought into question.
Yeah, it has just that great pacing of like building it up over a couple of loops before you go in.
And then when you do...
Well, you don't actually go in the first time.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to
That's
need
what
your
I'm
help,
talking
which is...
about, like building up the tension.
After the first few, I forget the order in which often these sequences begin to happen.
Right. So, the first, like, quote, puzzle... like, if we're just going to take the game, like, step by step...
Yeah.
The first thing that you do is you walk straight through it. Then the second time you walk straight through it again. The third time the door is locked. So you go up, you can't do it. And in order to trigger it to not be locked, you just have to walk back around the corner and then turn around and go back. Pretty much everyone I've seen play this game, which is a lot of people, I've shown this game to as many people as I physically can. In fact, you completing it yesterday was actually your second time.
Yep.
Because I insisted on showing it to you at like the moment that I got a PS4. But most people I've seen actually just try and go back out the first door and like are like, oh, I can't do that, and then turn around and they're like, why can't I go through it again? So I don't really know like what their intention was other than to get you to like realize that if that door is closed that you need to turn around, but like there's only 2 places to be, so I don't know why that was necessary. But the third time the door shuts and the bathroom door creaks open. And this is like, it's weird because at this point you have to figure out that you have to like zoom on things to trigger certain things.
Yep.
Because when you look at the doorknob from the outside in, something shows up and closes the door. And then the door unlocks. So it's like the first in a line of not a long line, but like in a succession of jump scares that this game does do.
Am I correct in my belief that none of the controls are explicitly tutorialized?
It's when the games, like a lot of games do, a lot of horror games, it starts with a brightness thing, and the brightness screen is the option screen, which also contains the controls.
Okay. So you know when you're starting the game, if you read that, you can do the zoom thing?
You can zoom, yeah.
Okay, that's important.
So, yeah, so you look in the bathroom and realize there's something in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But the door unlocks, and so obviously you're not sticking around to find out what the fuck that was.
Yep.
You bolt straight through. So...
Now they've established not just that the house is a thing that acts on its own, but that there is something else there.
Yeah, there's something in the hallway with you, essentially.
Yeah.
And that becomes increasingly clear because the next time you go through the hallway and the door is open to the bathroom, there's just fucking a horror baby. A fetus in the sink. Being gross and screaming.
And it's like alien. Like, it's got a weird head.
It has like a distended head, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that is in some way that's a medical thing. Like, I think that their implication, because it's Kojima and because it's Silent Hill, that it is not like that it is some kind of like space Neptunian baby.
Right, I'm not implying that it's actually
Right.
extraterrestrial.
It's an actually horrible thing in the same way that a Siamese cockroach is an
actual horrible thing.
Yes.
I mean, the Siamese cockroach is probably totally satisfied with its life walking around, whereas this is likely like a miscarried child. In fact, it is, because the radio report states that.
The radio will be playing the whole time all this is going on.
Yeah, so you were hearing this over and over
and it
over
like
again.
at least it did for me. Like, it just all slowly sank in.
Mhm.
Like, I'm sure some people just listen to it
On the first,
on
I
the
was like,
first
oh,
go
what's going on?
through.
No,
Yeah.
I was like that as well.
But yeah,
like,
like
I walked through it.
I think
couple
that's the
times.
intent, is that it'll like slowly dawn on you.
Yeah, and so this is presumably the unborn child of the wife that you or somebody in this house killed, wailing in a sink in a bathroom, which is also where the daughter was killed.
Yeah.
So I guess as that sinks in at this point,
Sinks in.
damn it. You then like the door starts being assaulted by some outside force, and you need to like push through it by looking at it in a mirror. PT.
It's assumed because they want you to feel assaulted, so they're going to. When you're assaulted and you realize you can't leave through the door, not that you would even want to, you're going to be looking around for a way out.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene that they're wanting to build up to is you look at the mirror and you see in the reflection light appear as the door opens.
Right.
So that's what they were trying to set up there, which is also really effective.
Right. I think that it's one of those things that's just like, it's a game issue. Like the things that you do in a game cannot be. The timing of things can't be purely prescribed,
right,
because the player has agency. And so they had to come up with something for you to do that's going to take long enough that you're going to be in the bathroom while the door is being pounded on, long enough for that to become like a scary thing, but not so long that it becomes like hilarious. And you're like, why is it that I'm just stuck in this bathroom forever?
Yeah, it can't break the tension. So it just sets the release point at when the prescribed moment they want to happen happens naturally, which is you looking at the mirror and seeing the door opens behind you.
Yeah, this is the exact kind of thing that makes me think that this game is probably just better off played by yourself.
Yeah.
Not that I can resist like watching somebody play it when they play it for the first time.
Yep.
But I feel like a lot of people beg for mercy at this point. Like they're just like, how do I get out of here? Please just tell me how to get out of here.
I feel like what they could have made it a little clearer, or made it players come to that conclusion a little more naturally if the mirror was less fucked up.
Right.
Because like it's like looks like it's been like hacked at with a knife,
right,
so that you can't see your character's face. But it goes so far that like you can't really see anything in it at all, even at the tops and bottoms, where it's still okay. So like you zoom in on the part that's not scratched, and like you can barely even tell what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I think it's also, if they'd make the mirror physically closer to where the fetus is, it would also could have made it gone smoother, because I mean the fetus is positioned in the sink to draw attention to that area,
right,
presuming you're going to zoom in around it. And if they'd made the zoom in on the fetus like equivalent to triggering the exit while still allowing you to have the mirror moment, then I thought that might have been a way to make the whole thing smoother.
Yeah, just like bring the two things geometrically closer together so that you could be looking at the fetus and then out of the corner of your eye
see the door open.
Yeah,
that would be good. Also, video games, ladies and gentlemen. If you want, like, we really need to put a place where they could zoom in on the fetus.
It's crucial.
It's a crucial fetus moment.
So then you leave and everything's fine.
Yeah,
right?
Everything is super fine
you
all the way
exit to
through the next
hallway.
loop. Nothing bad happens. Nobody ever quit playing at this point. Because when you round the corner on the next loop, there is a distended body just like stretched fucking 9 feet tall.
You described it that way before.
Mhm.
Like, is she elongated?
Yes.
Oh.
I think that
Easily.
she's either tall
See-
or she's like off the
Yeah, see,
ground.
my-
and the light
My
is causing it to look that
interpretation
way.
was that she's in the position that she died in. Like, that she was hung. And she's, like, hanging there off the ground.
Mhm.
She looks like that because she's a fucking dead person. But I actually spent a lot of time before coming here.
'Cause, like-
Googling pictures of Lisa to try
Okay,
and
yeah,
get a
because
better
like, I didn't know if
understanding
it was
of the model.
a perspective thing.
No, she's that fucking tall.
Okay.
And that's
But
a very Silent Hill thing.
Okay.
That is, but also I think that you were also correct because I think that is what it's supposed to invoke. Because,
Yes.
Yeah, she
yeah.
looks like she's hanging.
Yeah, her neck
By-
is to
yeah.
the side. Like
Like, her
her
neck
arms
is
are
broken.
like dangling. And I mean that
And
is
her toes are not touching the ground. Or if they are, they're barely touching.
yeah, like
Yeah,
she's like on
it's-
tiptoes.
Yeah.
It's yeah. This image of Lisa is a very sort of Japanese horror, which in turn makes it very Silent Hill.
White dress, black hair.
Yeah, it's a ghost of like a dead former lover. Like this is such like a classic Japanese horror
Frankly,
trope.
I think calling it a ghost without the additional context of Japanese horror ghost
Mm-hmm.
isn't even really fair because, like, ghosts have become exposed to such a point in culture that they're not
Ghosts
anything that I think
exposed.
is associated with horror imagery like that much anymore. Like you can have ghosts, I think, in most genres, whether in like a jokey sense or non-jokey sense, and will still be accepted. Like Lisa does not look ephemeral. Lisa looks real.
Yeah,
Very, very real. And right there.
right in front of you.
About 10 feet away in the place you know you need to go.
Right. Also, didn't know until you played the game that she will stay there as long as you don't like cross a certain threshold.
Yep.
Because you stood there and she was just in frame for a while.
Yep.
And almost everyone else that I've seen play before stopping will like amble forward a little bit and then like and like maybe back up, but at that point the lights have already cut and she's not there.
No.
So
You've got to make
Yeah.
the choice to step towards her for the game to progress.
Yeah.
And that was the choice I didn't make on my first playthrough. I instead stopped playing the video game.
yeah. Well, to be fair, the game you were playing at the time was JJ's Staring at Doors Simulator 2015.
Yeah, it was hysterical, like how afraid JJ was of the game.
To be fair, you and Dan were also not having the greatest time.
Well, but it wasn't quite the same as JJ.
it's not, yeah.
Oh yeah, I think the distinction is fair.
Like, for
Yeah.
me, like, it was like, okay, I need a breather for a second.
I'm pretty sure that Dan may have covered his face at one point.
Well, yeah, Dan's a big... I was the one playing.
Right.
Dan's a little bit more of a scaredy cat than me.
Mm-hmm.
But at least when it comes to horror games.
Yeah.
On the record,
He'd probably admit to that.
yeah, you, when going through this game, needed the rest to continue.
Yes.
I needed to decide whether I was going to continue, and that was the difference in both the pacing that we went through the game and my
Yeah,
experience.
because, like, it took me, like, probably, I think, longer than the average person to go through it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're the one who always fights back when I say the game only takes like 45 minutes to an hour to complete.
Yeah, I think that's if you know what you're doing. It's,
Yeah.
like, under an hour. But if you don't, it's probably more like an hour and a half.
So yeah, this moment with Lisa does seem to be like a pretty strong breaking point for a lot of people. Like this is the first moment where like I don't understand that necessarily from like a logical perspective because like a few loops ago you saw like a thing shut a door like that was clearly alive, and like the fetus is way more horrible to me in terms of like actually being like disturbing.
She presents more of an active threat to you.
Yup.
Like, because it's all been building up to something, and then that's the release.
I guess. I like my interpretation of it, and this is true of like all horror games, is that I always feel as though there's an active threat, like because like you're just assuming something supernatural.
Well, yeah.
You can die at any
No,
time.
like,
but-
exactly. You feel like there's one the whole time, and then the game presents you with it.
Right,
Yeah,
it
that
just
time
puts it right
becomes
in
And
there.
now.
it just smacks you in the face with it.
It's like,
And you're like, holy fucking balls.
It's so great that they do this before any of the later jump scares, because it's accurate to say that this isn't a jump scare, right?
It's just a
No,
stationary
because
thing.
because it's just there and you walk around the corner.
Yeah, it's entirely
Yeah.
dictated by your
It does
action.
not pop into the frame that's already there and make a noise.
Like most mechanical interactions in PT.
In fact, they warn you about it with sound design because you can hear the like labored breathing of Lisa through your controller speaker. Because fuck you if you thought you were safe in your real world with your plastic controller. Yeah, so like you can hear that like I don't know if it's like just breathing with only like one non-punctured lung, or if it's like
Punctured lung
or
breathing.
punctured lung, or if it's she's crying or laughing. It's something. It's,
Yeah.
it's
not-
almost as if her esophagus got crushed by a noose.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, it's just this horrible noise that just repeats through both the game screen and your controller just to really ruin your day.
Yeah.
And so you're aware that there's something different going on. The clock reads midnight at that point. But
Yeah, but like it's just enough time that like once you've reached the end of the hallway, you haven't reasoned through those thoughts yet,
right, you're just like,
and they just like boom.
Yep.
oh my god. And actually, at this point is where the game gets a little bit more.
Abstract.
I was gonna say like murky in my memory. Like I don't
Wow.
exactly remember, but
It gets more Kojima-y at this point.
yeah,
And just, yeah,
It's
it's
just
more
like
murkier.
right here, right there, they had that little climax, and then things reset.
Yeah.
Basically, and then things build up
Mhm.
again.
because your next loop through is basically the same. There's like the same as the original ones. Like there's nothing necessarily bad happening, and so I'm not 100% sure if this comes before or after the gouge it out, but there's like a scene where you burn a hole in a picture of Lisa with the X button. Which a lot of people for some reason look at that and they're like, I don't understand. Like it's a blue X. I've seen a lot of people struggle with that.
That's
puzzle.
weird.
It is a little weird.
Because, like, you look at it and you don't get it right away.
Right.
But, like, that's something, like, it's, yeah, clearly a blue X.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if you're not as familiar with PlayStation, you
Mhm.
might not make that connection.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's a very Kojima connection that needs to be understood out of the context of the thing that you're playing.
Yeah.
Like, you need to think about a controller to understand.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
think, like, JJ got it quicker than I did, but, like, not too much.
Yeah. Like, we love this thing, generally. This is probably the worst element of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is not a huge complaint, but, like, they probably shouldn't have gone this far for something that is required to progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Addressing the existence of the controller in like a main path thing is something
Mhm.
I think they could have either pushed off till later than this point, or
Yeah,
done some
because, I
other
mean, like, they
things.
do things like there's a piece of the picture that's hidden in the pause menu.
Yeah.
And that's fine because it isn't main path. Like, you never have to do that.
Yep.
But it is there. This just seems sort of out of place. But either way, that happens either before or after the next part, which is the guy on the radio begins to address you directly. Because originally he comes in and says some things, and then...
It's like the normal spiel.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
at some point
And
during
then
the
it-
normal spiel, he says, "Don't touch that
Dial
dial
now,
now."
we're
Yeah.
just getting started.
Yeah.
It was my favorite line in the game. But, yeah, he would break into the news report and he would tell a story about how, like, they wouldn't have hired you if you didn't look good in the skirt. And, like, this whole, like, it's like a very angry speech given to somebody who is presumably dead.
Yeah.
So, I guess because we don't have any additional context, we can't really know what that is.
Yep.
But it's this guy, and then he starts talking to you. And he says, "Look behind you." He wants you to look behind you. And you're like, "I don't want to do that at all because you told me to do it, and you're nothing but trouble." Radio guy.
Yeah, like, I found that especially effective because it took me a second to realize what was going on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why the reiteration is so important, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't I forget the exact line, but doesn't he also go like, "You look behind you"?
Yeah.
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 He emphasizes it more clearly the second time.
Yeah. Because the first time it is just sort of like a thing that comes in, as the rest of his speech was.
Yeah.
And, like, this is where he'll start, like, the radio will start just reading numbers out, which numbers are just inherently creepy, I think. Like, when there's no context to them, if, like, someone just started saying a list of numbers, it's just not a comforting
Yeah,
thing.
I feel like that's got to have roots in some kind of, like, movie or something.
Yep.
That's, like, almost like a trope.
Yeah.
Like, that was the thing on Lost. Like, they found that, like, radio tower, and there was just the string of numbers.
4, 8, 16. Yeah. Oh, man. I actually used to know that string of numbers.
Yeah, but, like, that's become, like, a thing, and it's just, like, unsettling.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the whole, like, numbers station thing.
Yeah, that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah,
Yep.
like, the radio stations that just broadcast numbers. Yep. Which is creepy. Like, I'm getting chills thinking about how creepy that is.
Yep.
And then, bah! You get fucking murdered.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so
when
then...
when you turn around.
Yes, when you do look behind you, Lisa kills you.
Which you have to do, because the door's locked in front of you, and you can only move forward for so long, and then jump scare.
My favorite playthrough that I think I saw of this was, I had a friend playing it, and he locked in the door, and then turned around and looked at the door, which he had never done before, and died right there. Like, he just didn't even take a step into the hallway. He walked through the door, and they was just like, and died. Like, I don't know, I have no idea why he did it, but it was hilarious to me.
He must have just had that thought, like, I've never turned around
I
to
never
look
looked
at the
at this door, yeah.
once I went through it.
And then you respawn,
Right.
and you're back in the initial zone that you haven't been
Which
since
is-
you barely started the game.
Which is basically like a dark basement room.
Right.
It's not actually down any stairs.
Wait, it seems as though it has to be like some kind of extra dimensional room, because it's just a blank room with a single light and a table, and there are tally marks all over the walls.
Yeah, but there are walls. It's not just like an abyssal space.
Right.
And the progression here is really important, because, like, the first time I saw this, I'm like, and I think it's reasonable to presuppose, like, oh, this is the reset point. Like, I lost the game, huge quotes.
Right.
I have to try and keep playing. But then you realize, if you're really perceptive, that you didn't see the cockroach.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, if you're less perceptive, that you still have the flashlight.
Right.
We forgot to mention that you pick up the flashlight the first time you go in the bathroom.
Yeah.
With the
The
famous...
bathroom's the only place in the game that's just like pitch dark.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the exception of this place.
And it was you getting the flashlight was a good excuse to trying to lower the lights a little bit more for tone and setting stuff. So you realize you have the flashlight, and you're back in this room. So the game is not reset. You're still fucking stuck here.
You thought you were out, but they pulled you right back in.
Yeah, and it then gives the player the opportunity, in one of the few, I think, like, really sort of like divergent choice moments in terms of what you do when in this game. You either don't take all the hints and just keep going forward, or you can use the flashlight that you have to investigate the new room that you couldn't investigate before because it was too dark everywhere that wasn't straight at the door.
Right.
And you find the meat bag.
The meat bag?
I mean, do we know anything else about the bag?
No, we
It's
don't know
bloody.
that it has meat in it either.
I guess. It could just have blood in it.
It is bloody.
As someone who's
Yeah.
held paper
The blood
bags
bag.
filled with bloody meat,
Yeah.
it bleeds like that.
Okay, so there's a blood bag on the table.
It's not a
And-
blood bag, it's a paper bag.
It's a paper bag with
We're not
blood
like
on it.
amateur phlebotomists
Okay.
over here.
It is a paper bag with blood soaked through it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always assumed it was a severed head. That's just me.
Me too.
Okay.
But and then it starts to talk to you.
Right. As you
And like
expect.
and on this most
As is
recent
tradition.
playthrough, and JJ was playing it yesterday, if you see in The Force Awakens, it sounds kind of like Kylo Ren with the mask on. So, and it gives you that spiel from the beginning in the text.
Right.
Yep.
Where it's like, can you be sure the only you is you? I don't remember the rest of it.
Yeah.
You can look it up.
Horrible,
He was walking
ununderstandable,
until he
unsettling
saw
things.
himself walking.
Yes.
And then presumably he did something about it, which is why he's now in a bag, and says that I'm sure the only me is me. Do you know that the only you is you?
So very cryptic and intriguing
Mm-hmm.
little speech.
And that's all you get. And then you get to start it again. You go back into the hallway.
Mm-hmm. At this point, like, it just becomes... because it's so routine to pass through the hallway,
Yeah.
the rest of this game is a series of, like... Because you go through... At this point, you can just walk and it doesn't ever lock you out. But the challenge here is to just like start finding things that are different. There's a puzzle where you have to walk letters from one wall to the other wall, and then it'll unlock a door, and you go through there.
Yeah, so basically they're relying on the fact that you've gotten this far already and, like, your curiosity about what's different in the environment to propel you forward.
Right.
Because you can keep going in the loop and never advancing.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything in the hallway. So you have to trigger the right things to advance.
By looking around and understanding your environment. And if I'm correct, isn't this also the point where Lisa starts beginning to appear just around?
Yeah, it's what the fans of this game have dubbed hauntings. Anytime the clock hits midnight, which it will chime if you're in the hallway long enough, or occasionally you'll just walk in and it will be midnight. And at that point, Lisa can spawn in a few different areas, and in 2 of those areas, she can kill you.
Yeah.
So this game has a meaningful fail state for the first time, but it's barely meaningful because you just start back over in the bag room.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much just a game. Like, we can't, like, explain each loop individually at this point because it just repeats and it just does things, and it's more of this. But not too long after that, you walk through the door, and all of a sudden you're going at fucking Mach 10. You're just running around in the house.
The eye hallway.
Yeah, the
continuous eye hallway.
All of the pictures on the walls are now replaced with eyes that are spinning.
And everything's red, and the hallway is just connected sequences of the hallway now.
I think maybe that's supposed to be a clue.
To look where
the pictures are eyeballs.
It definitely is, because I learned, looking stuff up before the cast, you can actually find the little hole that you look through in order to solve that puzzle into the bathroom. And if you look through it before you're triggering the success, you can see an eye in that.
Yep.
So, yes, it was both a clue and a horrible thing. That just makes you feel horrible because you're moving at 100 miles an hour, and panic is starting to take through.
When you were doing it, you were having trouble figuring it out.
Yes.
I think everyone has trouble figuring it out.
And then I said, I think what happened to JJ is what happened to me, and I never explained that.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is, I don't think you noticed the hole in the bathroom wall.
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah, like, it was there the whole game.
Yep.
And, like, you just didn't notice it. Like, when I was going through the game, like, I tried to be really mindful of my surroundings and really, like, look at everything, and somehow missed that huge hole in the bathroom wall. Like, I thought I had looked at that wall and didn't notice it.
It's just the bathroom is another step because you're exposed to it a whole lot less than a lot of the other ambient hallway features.
Right.
So it's sort of like another... You have to be even more observant to look in, take in every feature of the bathroom, especially since the first time you're in the bathroom is a panic scenario.
Right. But, like, I think it tries to lead you towards it because the hallway is, like, all discolored and red and whatever colors.
Yeah.
But, like, the bathroom is just, like, regular.
Yeah, it's like
once
white
you go
and
inside
good.
of it. So I think that's supposed to be a hint that, like, that's something about the bathroom. And then the hole in the wall is the only thing you really haven't explored yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the hints for that sequence, even though it's very difficult comparatively, is suitable. Because I think it being that hard is part of the point of that specific hallway.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be sprinting through forever, feeling trapped and lost and alone. And like this, you finally reach the point where escape is literally impossible and you're just going insane.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with, in like my playthrough, for example, running through the hallway a dozen times, not knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't also address like the crazy meat fridge.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the fridge.
Yeah, there's a fridge hanging from the ceiling. I don't know. I don't know how much value there is necessarily. In just,
I know.
Like,
We could tell the story.
It's the
about
first
it.
setup is the one that's really important. And as we already discussed, we've reached the point now where you are given free reign to explore and look around, and you may find the correct clues, or you might find Lisa. And that's the rest of it outside of the like secret stuff that reveals its status as a Silent Hills trailer.
right.
Right. So, fun story about the fridge. First time I was playing this game, like I said, I had been trying to like really look at the environment. So like literally every time I went through, I like looked at everything.
Right.
And like I got to the end of the hall, like that first stretch, and I was like, I had been noticing all the beer cans on the ground, and at that moment just decided to make a joke, like a dumb joke, not even a funny, just a comment on it.
An unfunny joke.
An
you know.
unfunny joke.
One of
So
those things people do that's horrible and
yes,
they don't know
an
it.
unfunny joke, so you know, like a comment. So I was like, man, like, so many beer cans around, like, where the hell is this guy's fridge at? And then I turned the corner and walked down, and it is the loop where the fridge is swinging from the ceiling where the light usually is, and it's dripping blood and may or may not have a body in it.
Yeah. And it's moving and shaking.
And it's making noise.
And being uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's like a lot of like screaming coming from it. I don't remember the news broadcast well enough to know if that's like something that is stated, but I think it actually might be.
I don't remember either. Honestly, of all the things that are scary, I think the fridge is among the lower end. It's very jarring because it's unexpected.
And it's also very memorable.
Yeah, but it's not really built up to or part of a chain in the same way that a lot of the things chain together.
Yeah, it's just a
well
thing
in the
that you
beginning.
don't expect to be hanging from a ceiling.
Yeah, a blood
Especially
fridge.
like if you were
And-
checking the ceiling before for like, oh, maybe somebody's gonna lean over the rafters, and then a fridge is there. It's like the biggest like, hey, fuck you, guy.
I think it's just another one of those, like, playing with your expectations. Like, the light has been there, and now it's replaced with something unexpected.
Right. So, basically, after we finished that,
Yeah.
you can walk through the house a couple more times, but all that's going to happen is that you'll start getting this graphical tearing, which looks like really clean. This is another great like graphical effect that they did, but and then the game will like quote unquote crash, and it brings up one of a selection of like I think there's like 6 or 7 error screens that can come up that typically have like a lot of different languages on them.
Yeah.
And then when you boot the game up again, you can just do loops, and there's nothing different. And this is where all of the Kojima stuff starts to come in.
The most Kojima stuff.
Yeah, and I don't really think that it is important or relevant, really, to explain this, other than you have to do a sequence of, like, ranging from mundane and asinine to extremely specific actions in order to trigger a phone to ring.
I agree. I'm glad, in fact, that you brought that up. Because what we're doing now, is the metagame.
Right.
I don't think it's appropriate to lump that in.
The teaser metagame.
Yeah. Like,
This is post-game content.
yeah. What we're trying to address on this cast isn't the secret reveal of Silent Hills. It's PT, the greatest demo ever made in the
Right.
history of mankind.
As a standalone.
yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think, well, I guess there's 2 reasons why we went through piece by piece in this case. First, because not everyone gets the experience of playing this game, unfortunately, and you might
Right.
only have watched a video and don't forget a lot of the things, so it's important to point it out. And second, like we referenced earlier, because this is like a master class in horror design.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably good. It's good enough that we can point to every feature and look at how it relates to every other feature.
And it very rarely falls short when you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, everything that we even complained about, in my mind, was like, that was good, and it could have been better.
Right.
Like, that's the floor of,
Right.
of PT, this game demo.
Is having to press X occasionally. Yeah.
I actually like that part, but...
I mean, it's fine, especially like if you're somebody who is seasoned at games.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really
Well,
jar you
I
because
do
you're used
kind
to
of
seeing
have
that
a-
kind of a thing.
Like, just like a total separate thing, kind of have a boner for the PlayStation controller, but...
That's true, yeah. That you do that.
Yes.
But, like you said, you kind of liked it. I think we did, too. There
Yeah.
are people who
Yeah,
complain
yeah.
about it, but, like, our point is that we kind of liked it. And
Right.
it didn't get any worse than we kind of liked it.
Right. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those, if you are interested in the, like, nonsense, because it is interesting in the way that, like, the Sombra ARG or, like, a Valve ARG is interesting.
Yeah.
In that, like, seeing the steps that were, like, done in order to get to the solution is, like, a cool thing that you don't believe people could actually do, but they did. You can find on YouTube, there's a 20-minute video that explains it. If I remember, I will link it in the show notes. It's literally just like a ludicrous cipher, and it has been stated that Hideo Kojima didn't expect people to finish it for 3 months, and they finished it in just under 2 days.
Yeah.
So they didn't perfectly solve it. That came much later, but they found enough of a workaround because of a speech recognition thing.
Yep.
Some people for a long time thought that the trigger for the second thing was playing a video of Hideo Kojima himself saying, "Did you like it?" into the microphone, which happened to work, but for a totally unrelated reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
Good times.
A
Yeah.
plus.
But yeah, so I think PT is it has been and will continue to be an inspiration to horror games in the future. We've already had Allison Road be pitched, canceled, kickstarted, and restarted, and is currently being worked on, but who knows if it'll actually go through this time.
Yeah, of course. It's
But
a
it's
Kickstarter.
like almost exactly the same.
Is that the game with the
concept.
really tiny hallway for no reason?
Oh yeah, it has a really tiny hallway. It's
Yeah.
like the roof is too small.
It's too small
too
this
narrow,
way. It's
yeah.
too
Yeah.
narrow. Yes.
So you've got that influence, and obviously, like I referenced at the beginning, even though it wasn't initially designed taking into account, the Resident Evil 7 is now living in a world where this nearly perfect horror game
Yeah.
has been born.
And it's like, you can't expect that Silent Hills would have been... You can't even expect it to have been anything like PT.
Yeah.
You only could expect it to have the same sensibility. And
Starring Norman Reedus.
Starring Norman Reedus. And
They did release that second, or first, whatever, little trailer thing
yeah.
that showed first person in a completely different building with different shit happening.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing that too, yeah.
That one, and that's really good.
It looks fucking incredible.
Yeah, I wish that I could have played that as well.
They should have released that as another playable demo.
Yeah. But, and that's the interesting thing. We don't know. Because,
Yeah, what the game would have been like.
Yeah, because that was shown the next year and was fucking off the wall. The guy, goes to pick up a ball and it turns into a head and fucking spiders come out of its mouth and a giant arm. It's fucking bonkers. But then the actual Silent Hills trailer that's attached to PT has Norman Reedus with a gun walking down a street.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is Silent Hill. That is what you associate with Silent Hill.
Yeah.
But it's not PT.
Right.
But the second trailer was, and I don't...
Yeah.
It's
It's
baffling.
fair. The response to that was probably a lot better than even they expected.
Oh, yeah.
Even though, putting that out, if nothing from the graphical stance alone, you're gonna be fucking confident about that.
Yeah.
When you produce the secretly best looking hallway in human history and throw it out without telling them about it, there's some smugness that's gonna go on in the back of your head there.
There's some people who are
Yeah.
definitely on the cover of Virtual Hallway Monthly.
My point is that within the year, post-PT, where Silent Hills still is going to be a thing, they probably moved elements of their design for as long as they were designing toward PT.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we can only speculate, and after all the Konami horse shit, we'll never really know any of the specific facts.
Yeah.
Not that, frankly, I regret it that much. We got PT, and that's enough for me.
I'm really sad that we'll never get Silent Hills.
No. I mean, I don't know. There's a certain beauty to what
Yeah.
PT is now.
But,
where
it
stands alone and it's doesn't get watered down by the existence of the thing that it's supposed to represent.
But I also can never purchase it,
Right, and
own it.
yeah, that sucks. Somebody should emulate this, immediately. Get on that happening.
Trust me.
Yeah.
The internet is trying.
Yeah. So,
Take agency away from your players in your horror games.
yeah.
You don't need an equipment screen to be terrifying.
Yeah,
you just need to walk and look.
I guess something that I was thinking yesterday, because JJ doesn't own a PlayStation 4, so he had to play both of these yesterday here at Chad's. And watching them both be played, we watched Resident Evil 7 first, and then PT. It really just made me appreciate PT even more.
Yeah.
Because, like, Resident Evil 7 is good. But... And when it came out, it kind of felt like it filled a void that, like, no Silent Hills left.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
oh, now we're getting Resident Evil 7, though.
Yeah, it's
And
a,
it's
it's
kinda
a lot like
It's
it.
scratching a similar itch, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, so that's the way I'd been thinking about it. But then we rewatched PT, which I haven't played in, like, a year or whatever. And I was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Like, this is so good. Like, it's... Because I was thinking that, like, Resident Evil 7 was, like, of, like, a similar quality. Like, not quite as good, but, like...
Yeah,
Close.
comparable.
Yeah, comparable, but then...
No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. It's just a first-person sort of, like,
Yeah.
slasher movie simulator
it's
trying
just-
to replace, like, the best
PT, yeah, it's so...
psychological horror simulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so atmospheric. It's so great at building tension. It's near perfect, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as you can get, PT basically is perfect. Just from it, like from the outset of like creating a horror game, a lot of the things that are wrong with horror games are solved because of the format the game is in.
Yeah.
Like, because it is like a short demo, it gives you that like, it gives you exactly what you want from it.
Yeah.
If that was for some reason 4 hours instead of an hour, and you just were in the same hallway, it would get sickeningly dumb.
Yeah.
And it's just like what they did was just enough engagement to make it work.
Yeah. Like, from everything we know about game design and why horror works and is effective, it's basically like a perfect execution.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for, I don't know, 20, 50, whatever number of years in the future it'll be when all of the legal nonsense related to discussing this no longer becomes relevant or actionable, and we get, like, the interviews about the creation of this product.
Right.
Like, many, many decades after its existence.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing with PT is that I just feel like it's a lesson, and it's a lesson that I hope people aspiring to make new horror games take into account.
Yeah.
It's just something that needs to be recognized.
Yes. Like, this game is so good that, like, when it got canceled, I, like, didn't believe that it would stay canceled.
Yeah.
Like, I thought, like, no way. It was way too well received. Like, they'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. And it really is just Konami too.
Yep.
Like, it wasn't the creative team, wasn't the development team. Konami handled business so poorly that they just cannot make the game.
And in 20 years, once we figure out what happens to Konami,
Exactly.
we'll have
They'll-
that as
they'll
context
just-
as well.
Be sitting there making their video poker machines.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid.
Pachinko.
Pachinko, whatever. And they won't care. They'll be on a mountain of money.
Yep.
And they won't give one fuck.
And they won't be able to hear us screaming from the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
Nope.
But they'll have to
No,
know.
We'll be really rich and successful from our podcast.
Right.
So, like, we'll be at...
We'll be a little bit closer
Yeah,
to them.
we'll be a little bit
Right.
closer.
I don't... No, you make it sound like that's a bad ending. I think when, like, the last Konami executive is, like, on his deathbed, made out of piles of coins, I think there'll be a little voice in him, him or her, I guess, probably him, considering it's Japan, that will be speaking in the back of his mind, on, like, he'll have his little rosebud moment, where he'll realize that instead of all those coins, could have made the greatest piece of horror technology.
Ever.
He'll be sad.
Right. And then in the horror movie version of this, it like pans out and he's actually in a refrigerator swinging from the rafters. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're talking about my favorite game of all time, and now officially pushing our number of Resident Evil titles talked about into over-representation categories. Resident Evil 4 on the Nintendo GameCube.
Yes, this is the apology cast
We're
Yeah, for
going
last
for
year.
last time.
we're filling the gap here. We're gonna finally address the middle phase of Resident Evil.
Yeah, we've talked about the adventure game first phase of Resident Evil games, and now this. And now we're finally going to take Resident Evil 4 by the balls and really show it. I'm kidding.
How well
I love this
suck.
game, and I'm just Alright, if you want to get a hold of us, you can do so. NOCLIPpodcast.com, NOCLIPpodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at NOCLIPpodcast. Please leave a rating or review on iTunes and tell your friends if you liked us. Oh yeah, we also have a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, we got that too.
It's going to be just like this podcast, except there will be one video there that is not available in audio form. Oops.
Turn around.